Well, hello everyone. It's Dave Hutchinson here at Cause Leadership Podcast, and I'm really grateful to have our guest with us today. This is Janet Noel-Annable, and she is the CEO of Karis Disability Services. And Janet, welcome today. We're grateful to have you on the show.
Oh, thanks so much, Dave. It's great to be here.
Yeah, good. Just looking forward to our conversation. And I think what would be helpful is that if you could just give us a quick overview of who is Karis, where did they come from, and where are we at today as far as the organization is concerned?
Sure, I'd love to. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
Cool.
Karis, actually, we're celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. It began in 1965 when a group of families looked at what was an opportunity or an option to create an organization not based on geography or a specific kind of service, but the sort of community of faith that would create space and inclusion for people with disabilities across Ontario at the time.
Right.
We were formed and became known as Christian Horizons, operated for many years in that space. And actually, about 2 years ago, we changed our brand to Karis Disability Services. Come back to that, but we currently provide services across Ontario and in Saskatchewan, and we do a bit of international work around around disability in 6 countries around the world, focusing on inclusion of people with disabilities in schools and in church communities.
Awesome. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you, Janet. That's it's an incredible organization doing
thank you.
amazing work, and as you say, has been doing it for a long time. Let's just talk about generally the struggles that people with disabilities have in Canada. Yours is particularly Ontario and Saskatchewan, but I'm sure it's modeled across the country as far as some of the challenges and issues. Do you want to just jump into that with us?
Yeah, it's what we spend all our time on.
Mm.
We have about 3,400 employees across these two provinces that provide excellent service to people. And it'd be wrong for me to start sort of from the deficits because there's some amazing things happening. People have good lives, are contributing to communities in real and helpful ways. And I'm just so proud of the work that our teams do across the organization. But the fact of the matter is that there's while there's lots of people having good lives, people with disabilities showing up and participating in their community, there are tens of thousands of people that are outside of that. You would
Right.
think that in Canada today, that people with disabilities, like sort of the regular population that has access to education and healthcare, that people with disabilities have access to the supports and services that they need. And unfortunately, they don't. So we know that citizens with disabilities can work and contribute and go to school and all of those things, yet so many people are left out. In Ontario alone, there's 53,000 people on the wait list who are currently living at home with aged parents. Maybe they're
Mm.
living in hospitals or homeless shelters. And, we're hoping that through, opportunities like this, we can remind people of the important work that needs to happen and the shifts that should happen in, social policy and government funding, but even in how we welcome people to communities as neighbors, as churches, as community associations. Karis really stands on the belief that communities are best when everybody has a chance to belong and contribute. And we believe that services and supports and knowledge and welcoming hearts can really go a long way to create those communities.
Yeah. And Karis really is a community in many respects. You have multiple residential settings
Yep,
for people with disabilities. Can you give us a bit more insight as to just the structure of the organization and how you do serve? Um,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, so we provide services through a number of different models. You mentioned residences or group homes where small groups of people live together. And typically it would be people who need a little bit more help who would reside in those spaces. There's also supports that are just kind of enough that people maybe have their own apartments or live with their families, and we provide a few hours of support here and there. We provide support in community spaces to help people get jobs or go to college or to volunteer or just participate in the life of a community. We also provide supports in specialized settings for people with complex needs. Sometimes people with a developmental disability also have a mental health support need. And so we have some specialized spaces that help people access not only supports that we provide, but we work in partnership with clinicians and healthcare providers to provide that extra measure of support that help people thrive when they have a complex support situation. We also have this amazing thing that we do in partnership with churches. I think last year in 7 different locations, we provided a camp for families. We call it Family Camp,
Okay.
where the whole family, including their loved one with a disability, come together within a camp like Elam Lodge Camp,
Okay.
or in a Joy Bible Camp. Anyway, it is so much fun, Dave. I'd really love for you to go to our website if you ever had a chance, or your listeners, to and type in the search bar Family Camp, because it is one of the most fun things that we do at Karis, and we get pretty excited about it. But what it allows is for families who have a loved one with a disability who may not have access to services that I talked about earlier, and they're managing really difficult days. And for a weekend or a week, they get to be just a family. Their loved one gets to tube or go to water sports or participate in campfires or whatever it is they want to do. And the families get to just have a vacation together. And it is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways that we provide supports, and certainly look to partner with other community associations, with churches and places, because it's really important to sort of share is that, while you mentioned that Karis is a community, we never want to be a community unto ourselves. We never want to isolate a person from their natural community or their important relationships and friendships and family relationships. We want to be the right amount of support so that people are a part of and contribute to their own natural community.
Right.
As citizens, we all have gifts and things to bring to community, and people with disabilities are no different. So we want to provide the right spaces, the right supports and opportunities so that all of us together in Canada and around the world benefit from each person's gifts.
Those are amazing number of different opportunities for people to engage with the community. But how does somebody actually get introduced to Karis and become part of the community? Is it through medical services or other avenues? Just curious.
Right now in Ontario and Saskatchewan, there are centers for access, so that if you are a person who has a diagnosis of a developmental disability, you would sign up and let the various government entities know. So, for example, in Ontario, it would be through the Developmental Services Ontario network, and you would have an assessment and you would be assigned a contact that would help you navigate sort of the system. In addition, you are eligible for unique funding called passports in Ontario that you would have the ability to receive directly, and that even if you are on a wait list for sort of the core services like group living or a day support program, you might also be able to purchase a few hours of support here and there that could hopefully help you until you are able to access some of the broader supports. You can also, if you wanted to come to our family camp, you don't have to access through anything. That is totally outside our government funded services.
Okay.
And you would go to our website and you could scan around on there and see what you'd be interested in, what part of the country that you'd like to participate, what camp looks good to you. Are you a winter person? Are you a summer person?
Okay.
So just maybe have a look at our website. That might be the best start for family camp.
Yeah, well, and that maybe brings us into another category here. Karis is a charity and provides a lot of services and raises money, and obviously there's government funding as well that it's accompanies the organization. How do you raise money for an organization like Karis? What are the avenues that you pursue? And then perhaps more specifically, the international work that you do as well. I'm sure that is largely fundraised for as opposed to government funded. So if you can open up about just some of the funding elements of what it is to run Karis from that perspective.
Absolutely. We're grateful for the government funding that we receive.
Sure.
We are deeply appreciative of both the Saskatchewan government and the Ontario government for their ongoing relationship with us and many other organizations. But you're right, there's lots that we don't have funding for, and so we fundraise for those kinds of services. I mentioned Family Camp, that is entirely paid for through fundraised dollars. Our international work, when you think in Canada these days absolutely, there's lots of work to be done in Canada. You can't go very far that you don't see people who are homeless or in poverty. And sadly, a high number of those are
Mm.
people with developmental disabilities. And so we're quite worried about that.
Yeah.
But when you look into a developing country where there is no government infrastructure, there is no funding available to people, families are really struggling, and poverty just compounds that reality for people with disabilities. So the work that we do through schools and through churches in places like Ethiopia or Guatemala is entirely funded through our fundraised dollars, and it
Mm.
is so. I marvel at how well the people in those communities use that funding that we provide to
Mm.
ensure that kids with disabilities have access to school or equipment that they need, or that
Right.
families are surrounded by, friends and family who can provide that support through their churches. Being able to equip a pastor or a church leader with the theological underpinnings of why God's community is full when people with disabilities are present and contributing
Mm.
goes a long way to shaping employers' perspectives or neighbors' perspectives about disability. We often find ourselves in those spaces dispelling long held perspectives that disability is somehow a curse or a punishment to a family who have sinned. And when a pastor can stand up and share the truth about disability, and that it is not a curse nor a punishment, and that in some ways God enables us to connect with people through so many ways, including disability. That shapes how people behave to each other, and we see huge impact in the lives of families and people with disabilities through that work. So that's all through our fundraised dollars. If people wanted to support our non-government funded work through fundraising, they could go to our website. You can become a monthly donor. You can provide support specifically to a project like Family Camp or our work in Guatemala. Um, or you can provide support to us generally. One of the things that we're hoping to do over these next couple of years is to do some really innovative housing projects.
Mm.
We'd love to maybe work partnership with or partner with churches or other community groups to create inclusive housing that could support lots of people, but also people with disabilities in those spaces. So that's
Right.
something we're thinking a lot about these days, and hope to raise some money for it in the years to come.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to give us a little bit more detail on the scale and scope of a project like that?
Yeah, great question. So, you know, d- supports to people with disabilities, housing and support services kind of go hand in hand. And as you can imagine, a lot of people in Canada are struggling with the affordability of houses
Yeah.
and housing. And when you're on a limited budget of, say, a government disability pension, like the Ontario Disability Support Plan, your funds that you have available for housing would be about $600 a month. And we
Mm.
know that it would be almost impossible to find housing in that space. And
Yeah.
so we're working through a variety of different initiatives, federal programs and provincial programs, to try to increase the number of housing spaces that
Yeah.
are available to people with disabilities. So advocacy with government for support services that, we hope we see continued investment there from a political perspective. But also we want to get creative and think about how we can build some of these spaces for people. We've got some early conversations with some churches who have surplus land
Okay.
and
Yeah.
looking to create maybe small units that could provide some housing to people with disabilities. And then if we can access government funding for the support, you've got a bit of a winning combination there for people to have a good life, and maybe even connecting opportunities for volunteerism and other programs that the church might provide.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that's good. Thank
that's
you. You've talked about faith a little bit so far, and I appreciate that. When you consider the faith community, whether it's Ontario or Saskatchewan or even internationally, how important are they to the work of Karis and what you're doing and some of these projects?
Great question, and an important relationship for us at Karis for sure. We are a faith-based organization, and we work to demonstrate the belief that all people are created in God's image and all people are intrinsically loved and valued by God. But we don't just support people who are part of the Christian faith. We support people who want our services and certainly believe that our perspective about God's love and value for all people undergirds the concepts of citizens and equality and inclusion that we believe all people can benefit from, regardless of their faith perspective. But, at Karis, we see the church as one of the ways that we can influence society's perspectives on disability. The people in the church are employers, they are potential staff members, they are neighborhood people, they are neighbors, they're voters. And so we believe that our perspective and sharing that perspective with church communities across Canada will not only create inclusive places in churches so that families who want to participate in the church community have a place to go, who are not seen as recipients of charity or benevolence, but as equal members of society and welcomed in as co-contributors within that church, but also as people leave that church and go out and hire people and consider their people that they interact with, just have understanding that people with disabilities have gifts to offer and bring betterment to the spaces that they're in,
Sure.
enables a different kind of Canada. I
Hmm.
think some of the work that we try to do at Karis, and certainly I spend a lot of my time as CEO doing, is trying to connect the dots for people. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're a person with a disability, you're aware of the disability or lack of supports and services that are available to you.
Yeah.
But if you're not, I think you're surprised by the numbers of people that are waiting. Today or yesterday, the Ombudsman in Ontario released a report that talked about the thousands of people that are living in hospitals, who should not be, that are not sick, that are not in need of hospital care, but have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And even thinking about that from an economic perspective, it costs at least $700 or $800 a day to be supported in a hospital, and less than half of that to be supported in services that organizations like Karis provide. So the very mathematical equation about the cost of crises management versus equipping families and supporting them to live good and productive and healthy lives because they have the right supports in place, that's one piece. But from a faith perspective, shaping how those people in churches show up in their church or in their lives outside of the church,
Yeah.
knowing that people with disabilities are important and that families need the right supports provided by government and the right sense of welcome and participation that is afforded by community, and that when they show up in church, they are an important member. There's a fella from Scotland named John Swinton who is a theologian, and he's actually the one that really started us thinking about belonging. And what his message to the world is that inclusion is important. It provides for laws and regulations that ensure that people with disabilities have access. But belonging is way more important. Belonging means that when you're not there, you're missed, and maybe even someone goes to look for you. And
Right.
every human being around the world wants to belong somewhere. And
Mm.
Karis believes that churches, not the only place, but it's a place that we're connected with. But we think about churches as, imagine if that was this experience that every person with a disability had when they walked into that church, that not only there was a place for them, that there was a special row or a
Yeah.
accessible ramp to get in or whatever they needed, but that when they weren't there, they were missed and someone actually went looking for them.
Yeah.
So that's the excitement I have when I think about what we could do in the church community.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where we're headed.
Yeah. That's really beautiful. I've never heard it described in that way. I mean, inclusion we hear a lot about, and that obviously that's very important. But that whole sense of belonging, that's a strong element of who the person is and how they're cared for. Thank you, Janet. That was great. Let's shift gears, if you don't mind. I want to talk about leadership, as you've just described. Karis is a large, complex community of people like yourself and others who are on the front line, working with with people with disabilities every day. But as a leader, and you've been there for a number of years, so that was another question I wanted to ask you about. You've been CEO since 2011, but you've been at the organization, I think, since 1988, if I have my numbers correct. So you've been a bit of a lifer as far as Karis is concerned. What keeps you there? And let's start with that, and then we'll jump into some of the CEO elements as well.
Well, they haven't kicked me out yet, so that's a good thing. Yeah, never intended actually that this would be my career. When I started work with Karis, I was a university student. I mean, it was a long time ago for sure. And, I think what's kept me here, to be honest, to jump right to that, is that services for people with developmental disabilities in Canada and around the world have really been shifting. When I started back in 1988, there were huge institutions that warehoused people across Canada, and said that, we need special places for special people. And it really separated families, it isolated people from communities. And we know there are horrific things that happen when people are set aside, and that there are people who are dehumanized, there was rampant abuse and neglect that happened in these facilities. And it's been so exciting to be a part of an organization that, together with partners, that not all Karis for sure, lots of amazing organizations with amazing committed leaders and teams, to help people find their space in community. It has been an incredible journey. I remember one of my roles that I had before I was in this role was to actually meet people in these institutions and work with their family and dream about a better life. And, families were so nervous. They had been told that when their child was born, maybe in the 50s or 60s, that if they kept their child at home, that they were being selfish, and that they should send their child away to these places, and that their child would have special education and special opportunity to grow and become whatever they were intended to be. But there were no schools, there were no doctors that would accept caring for children with disabilities. There were no associations, there was no Karis. Jim and Adrian Reese, who are founders, incredible people, they were one of the first organizations that started to organize, and as I mentioned, brought families together and thought about a different option than these huge institutions. But in my career, it was getting people out of these institutions, fighting for social policy to change that would not enable those kind of spaces to be maintained and potentially even recreated. And, to see those families a couple of years later celebrating that their loved one is making friends and is doing things in their community that they never dreamt that they would do, getting a job maybe, or participating in church or their faith community of choice, and going out for dinner, like just going to a restaurant or a coffee shop and enjoying the space of that so many people enjoy every day without even thinking about it. It was incredible. And, without exception, the hundreds and hundreds of people that I personally got to be a part of their lives, seeing the impact of the service that we can provide, and others, that I think is what probably kept me here. And certainly stepping into the CEO role, and um, thinking about, the work that we do together inwardly and then outwardly, how we work with our board of directors to sort of set long-term vision and plans about navigating the roads ahead to be able to best help people, vulnerable people, whether it's here in Canada or around the world, to lead a life of meaning and goodness and connectivity. So yeah, it's been a great ride so far.
No, it sounds, I mean, just given the number of years and the opportunities to grow into the organization and then to take over leadership of it. Not everybody gets that opportunity, and obviously these days it's maybe uncommon for people to have been as long at an organization as you have. So you've got a different perspective on leadership, I think, in some respects because of that. When you consider your role as CEO, what I guess what are the proudest moments that you've got, just from the perspective of things that you've been able to accomplish as CEO, things that you can sort of look back and go, I was able to contribute to that and bring a team together to realize, success in certain areas. What would be one or two examples that you could give us that maybe stand out to you as your best moments in leadership?
I think the first would be just, and maybe this is kind of a boring answer, but to run and to lead a responsible organization that
Mm.
is truly making a difference in the lives of people. Like to see this past weekend, we had our board retreat and we often connect with a local service community. What happened was is we're out near Peterborough, and one of the supports that we offer in Durham and Peterborough is we support artists who have a developmental disability to create beautiful art. And the team there set up an art show for our board to go and meet some of the artists and see some of the incredible work. And just being there and walking. And so it's kind of like all the things connected in one moment. So we have our board of directors who are responsible for the governance and good work of our organization broadly and over long periods of time. And
Sure.
then people who use Karis services, artists who were standing there supported by their staff, we had some of our leaders there as well, to tell the board about what it meant to be an artist and to produce beautiful works of art, to learn to be, it's not, skill is important for sure. I could not create these beautiful works of art, but to stand together and to watch the person describe how their staff support helped them get training and the place and the space. And then there was these beautiful profiles of each artist that were created. And they told me about they had met with their local MPP, and she had actually invited them to create an art show in her office space. And so they were excited to do that in celebration of December 3rd, which is coming up. And it was just all that together. And I was sort of standing back watching it. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about my job is when you can kind of stand back and watch all of the different things work together. The second thing I'd say, if I could just give one other example, one of the things that's changing in our organization, and we 100% support this change, is that we're seeing more and more funding be able to be provided directly to people, and then people, instead of having to go through those systems that I talked to you about earlier, access and such, that they actually get to turn and choose service provision for like who provides that services. And so one of the things that we've been working hard as an organization is shifting from that, government funds us and we turn and provide supports to people, to actually trying to provide supports directly to kind of customers. And so that's a fairly significant shift as an organization. And our teams have been working super hard on getting us ready for that work. But what that says about the respect that our country has for people with a disability to have choice and control over the services that they use is phenomenal, right? Like all of what we believe about God's creation of people as valuable and loved and in His image in a way that creates that equitable space of citizenship for Canada. That's it in a nutshell. We now turn to families and say, you guys have the choice. You get to pick your service provider and how you want to live in your community. You don't have to go fit into something that is constructed for you, but you actually get to have choice and control. And there's been a lot of advocacy and social policy. There's been a lot of helping, shift people's perspectives in those different environments that we find ourselves in. But I'm super excited about where services for people with disabilities are going. Last year, the federal government passed the Canadian Disability Benefit, which we're not there yet. It is a step in the right direction, but to see our Canadian government emphasizing that there needs to be a national plan for people with disabilities is a huge step forward. Right now, there's a patchwork of how services are provided across the country. To have a national strategy and a national income support is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
During COVID, the federal government instituted a gosh, I can't remember what it was called, but there was a monthly amount for people that lost their work, around $2,000, $2,200 or something. They said, this is the base amount that as a human being, you need to live in Canada. It wasn't a lot of money for
No.
sure, but it was seeing the base. Do you know that a person with a developmental disability today in Canada gets between $1,100 and $1,300 approximately a month? Like
Wow.
there's a huge gap.
Yeah.
And they have all the same costs as everybody else, housing, food, transportation, all that stuff. And yet, what was the lowest amount during COVID
Yeah.
is substantially higher than what a person with a disability has access to. So this
Mm,
national program, this shift in social policy towards service provision and all of that,
yeah.
like I'm dreaming of a future where people with disabilities aren't living in poverty, that aren't subjected to human trafficking and horrible circumstances which we see these days, that aren't living in hospitals or nursing homes when they're in their 30s or 40s when they have no access. Like I'm seeing evidence that we're moving in a better place, and I'm so excited about that. I'm proud of the work that we do or the opportunities that I've personally had as CEO to lean
Yeah.
into that space. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that's good. No, that helps. Thank you. Um, I just want to step back to the leadership question. I want to pose it from the perspective of somebody who might be looking to grow into a CEO role. Maybe they're close to that now, or maybe it's just an aspirational goal and they're working closer to the front lines. But long term, they have that desire to lead. When you consider leadership today and maybe some of the challenges and opportunities that you have faced and continue to face, I'm sure. What's some advice that you might give somebody who has a desire to be a CEO or an executive director of a charity in Canada today?
Yeah, I think, there's probably a number of things that I would say. I do believe that education really matters. I think we have excellent courses at a bachelor level or master's level, with whether it's in mainstream universities or in the faith-informed universities and colleges across the country. And I do think that investing in yourself through formal education is really important. Um, I also think working in the charitable space, while it's not for profit, and it's certainly there's purposes that are way above any kind of Bay Street or regular Main Street kind of typical business. Having some experience or at least some learning in the space of business is really important, because at the end of the day, we are running a business, right?
Yeah,
Our return on investment may not be the same as IBM or Amazon, but it
yeah,
is maybe it's more important, way more important than what the for-profit world is considering. I mean, we're talking about human beings and communities and well-being and families and all the stuff that actually is the most important. So being able to bring a lens of business experience, understanding, all of the things that we need to understand about efficient operations and excellence in service delivery and navigating resources and governance, all of the different components that come with the reality of business, I think is also important. Not to say that people need to work in other kinds of business, but just have a business lens to service provision or charitable work, I think is really important. I can't really speak about others' experience, but for me, I spend time doing the work, and I think that I'm I spend a lot of time thinking about the people who use our services, but maybe more so about the team that provide those services, and truly understanding what it means to do that, and what day-to-day life is like, month-to-month life is like, what things are concerns for them, and really caring about our people that provide these services, and being able to understand how we can use whatever things to help them have good lives. So, from a compensation perspective, making sure that we're really looking at that, and benefits and work life balance and
mm,
other things that matter. So, I think leadership, you need to know who you're leading, I guess, and what matters to them, and how you care for them in a way that allows them to do their work really well. Um, I think leadership, and certainly as a CEO, you need to know the environment that you're working in.
yeah.
You need to know what resources are both available to you today, or what could be available to you tomorrow or next week, and make decisions about that. You need to know what tools are available to you. I mean, the world is changing so fast with regards to innovation and machine learning and all of the things that are happening in that space. And I think as a CEO, you've got to have an eye to that, and not be consumed with what's next, but be ready for what's next, and be ready to take chances and try things out. Have a a bit of space in your calendar for
Mm.
playing, maybe.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
that's really important.
Yeah.
Um, and if you were thinking about what are some of the characteristics that I think are really important in a CEO, I think humility is important. I think
Mm.
compassion is important. I think resilience and tenacity and having lots of energy and ability to be rested to come to work. I don't know
Mm.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense, but the
Yeah.
ability to show up
Self-care.
with your pockets full
Yeah.
and ready to go. I think those are really important characteristics that someone would need to bring to be an effective CEO.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I do. There's lots of talk about. There's a real shift, I think, in Canada these days. Lots of people like me are starting to think about retirement, and there's neat opportunities that are making themselves or will be available to young people. So I would encourage other organizations. One of the things that we've done is we've invested in an emerging leader program so that it identifies people and builds pathways to try out different roles and try out, being a part of a committee or a working group to stretch a little bit and have new opportunities. The fruit that we've seen from those investments has been significant.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about the future of Karis because I know we have a full um, group of young leaders that are going to be ready to step in and are readying to step in and take over in the various positions that will be available in the years to come.
Wow, that's super exciting and not typical. I mean, to be honest, I don't think we see that kind
No way.
of direct focus on that emerging leadership group in
You
the
know,
majority of organizations.
and I think we are in a unique space because we're not solely focused on fundraised services.
Yeah.
We have a kind of a foot in two worlds. We have a very responsible, well organized, government funded
Yeah.
support that we do. Not that it's enough. We would love for that to grow and be able to support more people and
Yeah.
all that sort of stuff. But it's organized well. We are regulated in that space. That maybe affords us the ability to look up a little bit and think about
Yeah.
succession and think about planning. I think sometimes charitable or not-for-profit organizations, and again, I've only worked at Karis, so it's
Yeah.
but I think sometimes people are so focused on managing the today
Yeah.
that you don't always see what's ahead, and that's tough, I think, for some organizations. And
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to spend money on infrastructure when you see the need is so, and so we create organizations that are thin, and leaders are often chief cook and bottle washers because people care so much about the work they do, and I do care so much about the work we do for sure. But we also have to manage operations, and we have, there's things that are happening in a big organization like ours that
Yeah.
enables us to maybe spend some time in that future planning or
Yeah.
future proofing kind of from a investment perspective.
Yeah, and I think even from a sectoral perspective, though, I mean, to for other organizations to at least maybe glean some of that perspective from you and your team as leaders in and developing some of that emerging leadership talent. I say to people today, we're in the largest leadership transition that the charitable sector, has faced in decades, frankly, and some of that's just demographic shift, and we understand that boomers are moving into retirement. But I would say, and appreciate your perspective on this. This emerging leadership group that you're talking about, it really is a succession plan, and or at least potentially offers succession within the organization. And yet, many organizations, and I would say again, the sector broadly speaking, succession planning has been lower on the perhaps strategic initiatives list than it should be,
Yeah.
given where we're at as a sector. So maybe if you don't mind, just talk to us about succession planning and how this emerging leadership group might play into that. But just generally, even your own succession plan, you've talked about, considering retirement.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I guess there's two things: retirement and a natural time for leaders to move on, so that you
yeah,
make way for other young leaders with new ideas and
yeah,
You mentioned it's been a while since I've been at Karis, and
Yeah,
I do look forward to passing that baton. And I guess I feel very strongly that it is my responsibility to come up with some candidates for the board to consider. I mean,
right.
it's not my decision for sure who
Yeah,
replaces me. It'll be the board of directors. But I don't think that I'm doing my job if I don't at least have a few candidates for them to consider.
absolutely.
But what is my job is to make sure we have leadership throughout the organization. And in a big organization like this, we have, I don't know, hundreds of leadership positions that we need to make sure we have people that are able to do the job and that are able to move into next level leadership and all of those sorts of
Hmm.
things. So the
Yeah.
investment that we've made in emerging leaders is you know, people can identify and or be shoulder tapped if
Mhm.
their supervisor or leader thinks that they have leadership potential. And I guess I don't think it's fair to say that successive leadership is moving through and continuing to move up. Sometimes people
Yeah.
find themselves in a space that is absolutely where they want to be. And I
Yeah.
think, that is to be applauded and deeply respected. But for those that are interested, providing those opportunities, whether it's to step into a role short term, whether it's to do a learning exchange in a role, whether it's to be a part of coursework, a bit of an incubator, so where you're trying out a new project or a new approach. I mentioned that we're in the middle of sort of transitioning our services. We've had lots of people be able to be a part of some of those kind of new cool things that we're doing. So just making sure that there's both, I would say, both a formal way to do that within your organization as well as an informal way, so that people can kind of lean in a little bit as they see the opportunities, but also a place where you have a formalized learning and succession program.
So I'm just curious, given given that you've developed that within, does Karis have a do they have a talent challenge? Is it hard to find people to come and work at Karis? Is it or this kind of work that you're doing with the emerging leadership group, is that helping solve or bring a solution to the challenge of finding the right talent for the organization?
We certainly have challenges in recruitment, period. I think that there's not enough employees in our sector, and so we work hard to inspire well, all sorts of people, young people in Canada, people changing careers, people maybe retiring but looking for something small. But there's certainly recruitment challenges that we face. Leadership challenges, one of the things that we've done for maybe the last 10 years or so is to really identify where we're going to face weaknesses. So, you mentioned that there's shifts in demographics and society. We had a
Yeah.
bit of a turnover over the last couple of years in our executive director role. So that would be the executive director for a geographical region.
Mhm.
And we were, we kind of got ahead of it a little bit. We had some people that were in other positions that were a part of our emerging leader program, and we were so successful in that turnover. And yeah, just really thrilled with the outcomes of that. And I think people that have moved into those sort of mid or upper level leadership roles now are in the spaces. And by the time that I'm ready for retirement, I think we'll have a full slate of people
Yeah.
ready to be considered for that role.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I mean, this might sound counterintuitive, but I think it's if we could recruit at a lower level, whatever level that might be, whether manager or director, and instead of always having to go to the market to find a new CEO, right? If it's homegrown talent that has obviously, I mean, they're already on payroll at the simplest level. They've got a heart for the work. They have an interest in leadership. Why not bring up that talent within the organization so that the handoff is perhaps almost seamless, or at least as close to seamless as you can get.
Yeah, and I don't know if every charity or every not for profit is the same, but for us, the work that we do is complex. It's shifting society's perspectives on disabilities, shifting social policies, changing, which is great. All that stuff is real. Knowing the work that we do at a really grassroots level, knowing how it means to walk alongside people in really tough days and in really incredible days,
Yeah,
positively incredible.
yeah,
Um, that's a key capacity for leadership at Karis. And we
Yeah.
feel really strongly that, in order to be in that space, you need to know what it's like to work with people with disabilities and families and communities.
Janet, thank you for all of this. I mentioned we'd come back to this, the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. That's coming up on December 3rd. It's a recognized date on the calendar. Give us just a minute or so of a description of what that's about and how Karis is involved.
Yeah, love to. So the United Nations has set aside this day years ago, and recognizing that, as a fundamentally human rights, people with disabilities are currently and continue to be left out, marginalized, like I said, in developing communities, often in horrible and horrific spaces and places. In Canada, I mean, we still continue to work to reshape the mindset around, separate places for people with disabilities versus inclusive communities where everybody can belong. There's lots of work to do. And so the UN's recognition of December 3rd is a time to stop and pause and reflect on the important work that needs to happen at all levels of society. Certainly government have a role, and we'll continue to hold them accountable to that, and welcome your listeners to join us. But all of us have a role as neighbors, as family members, as employers, as church communities. The theme this year is creating strategic multi-sectoral partnerships for a disability inclusive society. I'd push them to think a society where everybody belongs might even be better than just inclusive, but
Right.
all of us have a role to play in that. It's not just organizations like Karis or government funded supports that help people have good lives. It's important for sure. The work that we do, that the taxpayer pays for in Canada, or donors support out of their genuine goodness and charitable interests, that is all super important. But all of us as human beings and citizens, we can welcome somebody to our church. We can hire somebody with a disability that maybe we have to be a little bit creative about in the beginning. But I guarantee you, when we create inclusivity and places of belonging in employment settings, in churches, in schools, in neighborhoods, in sports teams, and all of the stuff that we do every day, it's not just the person with a disability who benefits, it's all of us. We all get to share our unique gifts and opportunities with each other. And I guess that's the idea of December 3rd, is to sort of remind watching society, celebrate the progress that we've made so far, and recognize that there is still work to do, whether it's globally and whether it's in your community where you live today in Canada. There's
Yeah,
lots of work to do, and we can all be a part of that.
that's great. Yeah, no, thank you, Janet. I would normally at this point invite somebody to talk about their organization, how we can support them, but I think we'll end it with that because that just sort of covers everything that you guys are doing. But I would just want to thank you for your time today and sharing your insights with us about disabilities in Canada and people who are facing that, and certainly your work as a leader in that sector. We'll put in the show notes a place where people can find the website and find Karis online. And certainly I would encourage anyone who's listening today who has a heart for this kind of work to please go to the website and either donate or get to know some more information about who Karis is and the work that they do.
And if you're a person with a disability that you're looking for services, check out our website as well. There's lots of access to supports and services, or family camp, or other things that we do that you can be a part of at any time.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Janet, thank you so much for today, and appreciate your leadership and appreciate your friendship, and just have a great day.
Thanks so much, David. Pleasure to be a part of it.